Today we're going to look at the Eerie Go Round. This is a fully functional one. Turn it on. But it does have a shudder, and some of these get so bad that the shudder actually twists the top. So right there, when the mummy on the broom comes across, it jerks. There's some that when they jerk, the whole thing twists, where the bottom, like that. It's interesting. So we take it apart and see what might be causing the shudder, and what might be causing other ones to shudder so bad that it twists the entire unit. Now, if you don't have this piece not only can run on 4.5 volts from a DC power supply, but it can also run on batteries. So if you have a couple of AAAs lying around, 3 of them to be exact, you can actually just power this as a centerpiece with no wires. On the bottom are 3 rubber feet, and the screws that hold it together under the rubber feet. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know what I'm talking about. I will show you that in just a moment. Those are the rubber feet. They're just held in with some glue. And there's the 3 holes, and inside down below is a little Phillips screw. So you need a little Phillips screwdriver. I happen to have one right here. Underneath the pumpkin on the top, the only thing I can see through his mouth is the speaker. So I'm assuming, and there's some wiring up there for the lights that illuminate downwards. So everything as far as mechanism-wise should be in the bottom. There's some guides in the top just so it doesn't push the bars up too high. It's pretty standard on any carousel-style animated piece. Although most animated carousel pieces, the power stuff is usually on the top, which I've been finding, especially on Mr. Christmas. They'll have the most of the drive guides on the top. All right, 3 screws are out. Just feel under the stickers to make sure there's no hidden screws. There might be something hidden under the one sticker, so we'll just peel it off. No, it's just a casting. So the 3 screws are out. Now, let's see if we can get this to come apart. This is a rubber fascia around the edges, and I believe this is what's holding it on. This green, this with the pumpkin is kind of a green vine type stuff. I believe that is what's stopping me from getting the thing up. Okay, I do have some separation coming up now. It's starting to come apart. I'm not sure why it's not popping. The only screws I can find in this entire unit are on the bottom, so this has got to be the only way in. Alright, let's do some more assessing. Make sure there's no hidden screws in the battery pack. Nope. No screws in the battery pack. Alright, so this one's going to be a little bit harder than I figured. I'm double checking inside to make sure all I can see is the speaker. Yep, just the speaker underneath the pumpkin. Just turn off the flashlight. Checking to see if this cap comes off, because I noticed there's a notch here. So I'm wondering if this cap pops off as well. Sounds like it might be glued on, because maybe you do have to take it off from the top, like a lot of the other carousels. But I want to be careful with it, because there are lights. One there and there's one there. Yeah, there's glue. I know it sounds horrible on the camera. But everything is glued. Okay. Yeah. So, these are the lights for the top. This is what it looks like underneath. It's a resin, plastic resin. You can see the glue. You can see the ring right here. As you can see, it's mostly just adhered in the front, right there, and a very small amount right here, which you can see. The rest of this glue really didn't stick. There's nothing on the resin itself. There's no paint transfer, and there's no glue residue. So you have a basic circuit board on the top. There's the LED that lights up the pumpkin. It's right there. You have motor going from this one is the lights for here. This one says P5, motor, out, and these two are covered by their plug, of course. One says P1 and the other one says Power. So this is your incoming power. So when you plug your port in right here, that's your power. Comes up to this circuit board and then distributes it through the rest. One of those power wires definitely goes through this switch, which controls, of course, the on-off as well as the volume. What's nice about this is if this light up here burns out, this itty-bitty little guy right here, it's really easy to resolder once you crack this glue. It does look like an acetate style glue, such as super glue. I would probably glue it back on with hot glue, so if you ever have to take it apart again, it's slightly easier. But that LED is easy to replace if it burns out, and these two LEDs technically are the same. You push them through the top, pull them out, you can see they spliced the wires right there. You should be able to see the black heat shrink, and they just soldered the double wires on the one LED, and you can swap out your LEDs if you want to choose a different color, or if just one of them burns out. If you do choose a different color LEDs run at different voltages. So one that's a different color that runs at lower voltage might burn out, and one that's a different color runs at a higher voltage might be dim. You just gotta be aware. Circuit board is just staked on. It's got a couple of pins, and it's just slid over the pins. No screws, like so. 1, 2, 3 pins. On the back of the circuit board, we have the microcontroller, which is probably just the timing chip for the lights. A couple of small discrete components. Try and get a little bit closer for you all to see. Technically, if anything on the back of this board burns out, except for the big chip in the middle, it's replaceable. The big chip in the middle might be kind of hard to replace because you'd have to figure out what the chip is, and I don't think it's marked. Put on some magnification squints and see. Let's see, a little bit light. All this chip says right in the center in big engraved letter is A3. So, not a clue, but it's an 8-pin chip. So, since I can't get the bottom to pop off, I'm going to take out the 3 eccentric screws, which look like they screw into this green plastic. These 2 screws should pretty much just hold in the speaker, so I'm not going to take those out. I'm going to take these out first. Two of them are flanged screws. One of them is just a regular screw because it's recessed in a hole next to the speaker. And I'm going to break all the glue on the wires. This way, if they're under any tension when I try and separate it, they'll slide through their hole and not just pull tightly on itself. But just to be safe, I was thinking about it while doing this. I'm going to check under the speaker to make sure there is no screw. There is no screw. It is a 8 ohm, 1 watt, flat, piezo style speaker, which you can buy those in a lot of different places. So, just to prevent any loss, let's put the speaker back down. There we go. like to get to the drive mechanism. Also like to do without breaking this. Also, that way, any of you have to fix yours, don't break yours. Let's pop out. You do have to break the glue on these uprights carefully. It is hard glue. I'm using a small blade screwdriver and working my way in to try and crack the glue, because the thing about super glue type glues is they get brittle and you'll hear them like that crack, and you can usually break them free. You can also use heat. Yeah, this one's a lot stingier. There we go. And there's the drive mechanism. Okay, so most likely on the bottom, all we have would be the power switch and the incoming wires will come up the center. So everything's going to be done from the top. Alright. I'm going to slide the wires through. This one is the lights. These are the lights that are on the inside of the top. And I know they're labeled, but just because I forget things sometimes, I'm going to color code them. You've probably seen me do this before. One of those, it's better to be safe than sorry. I need another color. There we go. Grease pencil will be fine. It's caught on all that glue. You can see the glue residue. So speaker and the lights that I'm talking about are those right there on the inside. So there's your mechanism. Your drive motor's right here, drives your big pulley. Your big pulley drives a small gearbox, which then drives the big gears, which are planetaries, which you only have, well, technically one. And just have some random gear laying in here. Ah, one right there on that pin. That would be an idler gear. It just keeps this centered. Still an important gear, don't get me wrong. Here's your springs that make these go up. And then if you've never seen the inside of a merry-go-round style one or a carousel, these humps right here is what pushes them down. So, what's causing it to shudder? We definitely need to hook the power wire back up. We're going to hook it all back up, except for the stuff on the top, and turn it on and see how it all functions. So I'm going to plug all this stuff back in. Very quiet, very smooth. Very greasy. Alright, let's take a look at the gearbox. Since you gotta take it all apart to get to this point anyway, I think the shuddering is probably going to be in how tight this spring is. Because, yeah, this one's stiffer. It's also dry. These are wet with grease. This one's not. So mine's shuddering when this guy hits the front, which had some debris on the track. That's what I was wiping off while I was holding it up here. So I'm wondering if this stiffer one was getting caught on something up here, and also it's dry. Not sure. But let's open it up and see what could possibly break inside here. Nice, they're using a captive setup, meaning everything's enclosed in one housing. There's no pins like that one that are holding it in place. I don't know if you can see the shine and the fact that it's almost pure freaking liquid that's pouring out of it. And the pool, I mean, I guess I could soak some of this up and lube the pins. Use their grease. This excessive amount of grease is bad for these motors. On the Ghost Around especially, and the Roundup, they're very similar as far as they're just different seasons. This grease, you see it's all pooled on the top, hopefully in the light, gets inside these little guys. It burns them out. I have stacks of them over here that are burned out because they fill with grease. This one I just took out before this of a Ghost Around that I've repaired. I don't know if you can see the shine, but this motor is full of that grease. It burned the motor out. So if you have a Ghost Around or a Roundup and it's shorting out, not turning on, really dim, most likely one of the two motors is full of grease and is internally shorted. These are 300 CA motors is a generic term for them. Most motors are stamped on the side, like this one is on this side. They're hobby motors that are usually 1.5 to 6. Some of them are 1.5 to 9 volts. Their power range for most electronics is 3 to 5 volts. 3 to 6 volts. So That's why Lemax uses them, because theirs run at 4.5. So inside, if you're getting one that's binding really hard and twisting the entire top, because this is all that holds it, are these little flimsy plastic sticks, I'm going to say you probably have a broken 10 tooth, because you do have a 10 tooth in here. You have 2 other gears, and you have the very famous gear that's super hard to find. This is the gear they also use in the roundups and ghost rounds that do the lifting of the mechanism. Large teeth for high torque, which is what hits this planetary, or this ring, and then the smaller teeth for the transfer. And on most units where they bind, click, slip, that 10 tooth is the one that constantly breaks. So let's open this up, go through the liquid grease, get a closer look at this gearbox for you. Alright, let's get it a little closer to the camera. As you can see, I see the sheen of all the grease. You can see just the ungodly amounts of grease. Look at all that. You can hear my dog. And there's a little 10 tooth, and that is the most common gear to break. Might be hard to see, the white might be overpowering. Let's change the color temperature of my light here. Yeah, there we go, more of a yellowish light. Mine appears to be okay, which I would hope so. It works. It just shudders on one character. Just doing a basic check of the rest of the teeth, looking for any debris. Like there's some stuff right there. So I've found on a couple of pieces that have skipping, jumping, there's plastic shavings or resin pieces or foam, styrofoam. It gets caught in the teeth, and of course the teeth intermesh, and then it skips. It can't go all the way down into the groove. It's just an unbearable amount they put on this thing. I cannot believe it. There's pros and cons to grease. I mentioned it in the past. It is a great lubricator, grease oil, but if you get any dust in it, it turns into concrete. The grease no longer lubricates, it binds. So if you have one of these that's shuddering, skipping, clicking, etc., I would, much as you're going to hate to do it, take the top off. Don't take the bottom like I tried. You have to take the top off to get the bottom off, because in the center, which I'll try and show you in just a moment, are 2 clips to release the center base, I believe. So get the screws back in. Sure they're snug. Yeah, right here and right here are 2 plastic clips. And I believe those will pull the top off, and then you have to get this whole center piece to come out, probably through the corn stalks or whatever they want to call the center housing. Only time you should ever have to take the base off is if your volume wheel goes out or your power port. Everything else you can see runs right up the center. Right there. Goes right to this circuit board. Right here. We're going to have to unplug the circuit board, of course, to put it back on the top. I would recommend using hot glue versus super glue, like I said. for repairability in the future. Everything breaks, especially these. You know, let's try and get this to go back in the way it was. There we go. Perfect. In the bottom is going to be something similar to the top. If something broke inside the bottom, you might have to take the bottom off to check it. Wonder. Let me see if I can get a sneak peek in here of what might be in this base completely. Just to give you an idea what you might have to replace inside. Seems a nice bright phone light again. Okay, I can see what's down here. Alright, there is no mechanism down here. We have a handful of wires because you have a battery box as well as a power port. So you have 2 wires coming off the battery box to go to the volume switch and go up. It also shares one of the leads on the power port. So that's why there's a total of 4 wires coming up, 2 for the volume and off on, and then 2 is your power, your hot, and your negative. So, the center does not rotate on anything specifically. This center hub that spins is sitting on. It's just an axle. There's no gears. There's no guides. There's no mechanism. It's just centered in a hole, and the hole is what keeps it in alignment. Light off. Like that. So, the only time you should ever try and pop the bottom open is to fix the power port or fix the wheel. And I am still not sure how it comes out other than popping those 2 pins up in here, pulling the center out, and then pulling the axle, which is this corn stock is the entire axle housing, out. And then the center should come right out. There are no other screws holding it in. It's got 2 similar clips on the bottom of the axle that are holding it. So the axle has a groove, and then the clips are grabbing around it like so. Some of these wires. I'm trying to do this carefully using the copious amounts of grease to hold that one gear in place. so it doesn't fall off. Like that. And just to help hold it down, because of course the springs from the characters are trying to push it back up, I don't want to go all the way down, I just don't want it to pop all the way up. I'm just going to stick in these two flange screws about halfway. Like that. Because I want to make sure that gear is in alignment. I also want to make sure these posts get back into their pins. I am going to put a dab of super glue on these, because these are actually the structure that holds it from twisting. So, there we go. So, I use the Gorilla Glue with the paintbrush. Loosen them up just a hair again. So. The reason I'm not taking the screws all the way out is that planetary or guide gear, so it doesn't fall out. Okay, all three are back in their respective holes. Screw these down. There's the other one. Go. And the circuit board. Just plug everything back in, make sure it works, and we'll fire up the hot glue gun and glue it all back together again. Click and green. That's not good. Probably I lost one. Alright, what'd I lose? It's weird. Well, the mummy on the broom isn't stuttering anymore. Or shuddering, sorry. It didn't have a speech impediment to begin with. But apparently I lost a connector down inside. We get the music and the lights are all working. So that's kind of weird. Let's see if I can find the connector I lost. It's not binding, which is amazing. You'd think that it would bind with a possible wire stuck down inside. So I think mine, with the mummy that was jerking, was the debris on the track, because they're not all in the center as far as the track goes, and the fact that the spring guides were dry. Out of all the characters on here, he's the only one that didn't have any lubrication. And there's plenty of lubrication in there to go around, I'll tell you that. They used way too much. Hopefully this didn't set all the way. Of course it did. There we go. I don't think I'd say about that Gorilla Glue. It sets fast. Maybe it didn't have anything and I just wasn't paying any attention. There's no wires in here. Could have sworn there was a fourth. One wire set coming off the motor and 2 wires coming up the center, and that's it. Alright. Let's try and put this thing back together again for the second time. Make sure those teeth line up. I'm gonna have to go through and review the video and oh, I know what was plugged up there. Ha! It's the pumpkin on the top. My bad. Yeah. And I'm sure some of you yelling at the screen saying that I should have remembered that, but I didn't. Nice. Guess I gotta glue both sides in on that one. Okay. Glue out again. wrong screwdriver. So I'll try not to do what I did and break off one of the plastic legs. There we go. There we go. Back on its pins. Get the hot glue out. Get the hot glue heating up. And while it's heating up, we'll put the bottom back together. There we go. Since we're going to have to hot glue these pads back on, let's put the battery cover back in. So there we go. Everything works just like it used to. So, I guess the easiest way to take it apart is don't screw at the bottom. It's not going to do you any good apparently, unless you have a problem in the bottom, meaning the volume or power port. The top, you have to break the top disc off. And I don't mean break as in shatter the disc, I mean break as in break the glue. If you work around it carefully with small blade screwdrivers and maybe a spudger, which this one's a little too flexible for it, but screwdrivers work pretty good. You should be able to crack this top off. You can apply light heat. The resin will handle the heat more than this because this is just plastic. So take your time, work at it. Don't force it too much. Just work your way around. Careful of the sign on the front that you don't break the pumpkin and the pumpkin skull off, or the sign itself. Ooh, that's hot. Get the snot. Just to ensure, since this is there's slack in here, meaning that you can off-center this, I'm just going to put the hot glue on the top and then just push it onto the bottom. Like that. One, two, three. Alrighty. She is back together again. Move the chair. I'll turn it on and lower the lights so that way you can see what it looks like in low light to dark. You can see everything's pulsating like it's supposed to, which is on the inside of the skull, that one little green light. The green light pulsates probably because of that little computer chip. You can get a pulsating green light, but I doubt that's what they did. It'd be more expensive to isolate it. They probably just use the same green LEDs and then use the chip to make it pulsate. Timing chip is probably what it is. The 4 lights underneath work fine, you can see. And the characters are moving just fine. You can definitely hear the volume. And you can see that the switch works like it's supposed to. No volume and max volume. Of course, on my display it sits like this, where it's just spinning. But I got rid of my shudder, which was probably just the dry shafts. But if you have a really bad one, you might have a broken gear that's catching every time it does a full rotation or two. Sometimes those tend to work and then they intermittently skip with the crack in them. It just depends on the torque that they're under at the time that the crack reaches the other teeth. So, if you have the Eerie Go Round, you'll have to do the scary thing and break the top off. And then get to the mechanism inside. Unless something down here fails, meaning the power input, the wheel, or the battery pack, you shouldn't have to take the bottom off. And to take the bottom off, you have to take the top off. Once you take the top off, you have to pull everything out, push those 2 pin clips in, pull the top completely off, which will allow you to just have access to the core. And then pull your screws out of the bottom. If you can, like I was doing with the screwdriver, wedge this open right here in the hard plastic area where the seam is, and go in there with a long thin screwdriver and pop the 2 clips. And that should drop the bottom. Try not to break the clips. Of course, this is a couple of years old. After a while they get brittle, especially if they're put away in storage over the summer where they're in a location that gets warm. So, but yeah, Eerie Go Round, disassembly. Pull the top, remove the screws, pull off, carefully crack the hard glue onto 3 vined uprights and get to the gear pack. So, hardest part of the whole thing is just removing these 3 plastic uprights so you don't break them, because if you break them, you're going to have a bad day. So, you can always try and replace them, meaning if you do break them, you might be able to glue the brake, which probably won't hold, or you can replace them with a wooden stick and paint it green. If you're really good at making stuff, you can give it the texture of vinyls, or you can replace it with a steel rod and do the same thing. You can buy threaded and smooth rod over at a hardware store. So, hopefully this is informative and it helps out anybody with this piece that's having a problem with it shuddering or jerking or clacking or stop spinning and it's still going. I mean, you can hear the mechanism, but the characters aren't moving to get inside to get to the moving parts. So, until next time, have a good one.